Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar is more than just a novel. It is a poignant, harrowing portrayal of a young woman's descent into mental illness. Published under the pseudonym Victoria Lucas in 1963, the book draws heavily from Plath's own experiences, especially her battle with depression and her brief time in a psychiatric institution. The Bell Jar tells the story of Esther Greenwood, a talented, ambitious young woman who seems to have everything going for her: intellect, beauty, and promise, yet finds herself suffocated by societal expectations and an overwhelming sense of alienation. The novel's title references the image of a bell jar, a symbol of Esther's mental state as she feels trapped inside an oppressive, inescapable glass dome, unable to breathe or escape the weight of her inner turmoil. The book's exploration of mental illness, identity, and the societal pressures placed on women has made it an enduring classic, particularly among readers who have identified with Esther's struggles, even decades after its publication. At its core, The Bell Jar is a meditation on the expectations placed upon women in the 1950s and 1960s, expectations about marriage, career, and personal happiness. As Esther grapples with her future, she begins to experience an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. The novel is not just about her mental health. It's about the conflict between the roles she is expected to play and her own yearning for freedom and self-determination. Plath's haunting, sharp prose captures the inner chaos and confusion that comes with depression, making it one of the most important works in American literature. The Bell Jar has, over the years, sparked numerous discussions about its controversial themes, including its treatment of mental illness, its exploration of gender roles, and its portrayal of the often stifling realities of the mid-20th century female experience. The novel has not only cemented Plath's place in the literary canon, but has also become a symbol of the struggles of many who have found themselves in similar positions, caught between the weight of external expectations and the depth of internal anguish. Now, let us journey into the life of Esther Greenwood, the central character whose story unfolds with haunting precision, revealing the complexity of her mind, her disillusionment, and the suffocating grip of depression. The Bell Jar is more than a personal account of a woman's mental health. It's a universal story of the search for identity in a world that often demands conformity. Esther Greenwood, a young woman from a suburban town, begins the story by reflecting on her life as she embarks on a seemingly promising career. At 20, she is intelligent, strikingly beautiful, and ambitious. She is awarded a prestigious internship at a New York magazine, a dream come true for a college student who's always felt an unshakable sense of longing for something more than the life she's been handed. Arriving in the city, she is dazzled by the bright lights, the bustle of Manhattan, and the promise of opportunity. It feels like a world full of endless possibility, and she finds herself surrounded by other young women, all of whom appear to be chasing the same dreams. But even in the early moments of her time in New York, Esther begins to feel a sense of alienation. She is surrounded by girls who seem to have it all together, well-groomed, fashionable, and completely enamored with the glamorous life of the city. Esther, however, feels oddly out of place. She's not like them, and the pressure to fit in only deepens her discomfort. Her inner life, rich with intellectual curiosity and emotional complexity, doesn't align with the shallow aspirations of the girls around her. She doesn't share their enthusiasm for the glamorous cocktail parties and the superficiality of their social scene. Despite the promise of success and the chance to live in New York, Esther feels an eerie distance between herself and the people around her. As the summer drags on, the disconnection only grows. Esther is given a whirlwind tour of the lives she could have if she chooses to embrace the world of privilege and social climbing, but none of it appeals to her. She is offered chances to date successful men, attend extravagant events, and take part in the social ritual of young adulthood. But she doesn't see herself reflected in any of these possibilities. What is the point of it all, she wonders? What is the purpose of seeking validation from others if it feels hollow and unfulfilling? One of the most poignant moments in Esther's time in New York is her interaction with a young man named Buddy Willard, who she briefly dates. Buddy represents everything that society expects a woman to desire: handsome, educated, and with a bright future ahead of him. To Esther, however, Buddy is a reflection of everything that's wrong with the world she is trying to navigate. He is a product of the same societal expectations that weigh on her, embodying the standard of masculinity she has been taught to admire and strive for. Buddy's approach to life is neatly packaged. He seems to have everything figured out. But to Esther, this only highlights the confusion and frustration that she feels within herself. She knows she should want what Buddy offers, but she simply doesn't. She can't reconcile his world with her own sense of self. She finds herself questioning the very concept of happiness that Buddy and others around her so eagerly pursue. Despite these tensions, Esther's internship continues, and with it, her sense of disillusionment grows. The magazine office becomes a microcosm of her internal struggles. The women she works with are all striving for positions of power, but it becomes clear to Esther that none of them are truly happy. They wear their ambitions like badges of honor, yet their lives are filled with superficial desires and hollow goals. Esther looks at these women and sees a reflection of her own potential future, a future where success comes at the expense of personal fulfillment. She feels suffocated by the expectations placed on her to be something she is not. Every time she steps into the office, she becomes more and more disenchanted with the life that she's supposed to want. In the midst of these feelings of isolation, Esther is sent on a trip to the beach with some of the other girls from the internship. Here, she is further alienated as she observes their behavior, their carefree attitudes, their ability to find joy in the simplest things. Esther feels out of sync with them. She's unable to participate in their frivolous activities, unable to take part in the superficial joy that seems to come so easily to them. She becomes more and more aware of her own sense of alienation, her inability to engage with the world around her in the same way that others do. The contrast between her inner turmoil and the external world that appears so simple and carefree grows ever more stark. As the days pass, Esther's mental state begins to unravel further. The city, which once seemed full of promise, now feels oppressive. The constant noise, the crowds of people, the pressure to fit in, everything begins to weigh on her. She starts to withdraw, becoming more introspective and questioning the very meaning of her life. What is the point of striving for a future that seems so empty? She begins to wonder if this is all there is, if the pursuit of success, love, and approval is truly the purpose of life. Slowly, the bright lights of New York, once so full of promise, begin to blur into a suffocating haze. Esther's disillusionment with New York is not just about the city itself. It is a reflection of her internal battle. She is at odds with herself, torn between the societal expectations that demand she conform and her own deep need for something more, something authentic and meaningful. The realization that she cannot fit into the mold of what others want her to be begins to weigh heavily on her. She feels lost, disconnected from both herself and the world around her. Her internal conflict deepens, setting the stage for the dark spiral that is about to unfold. The chapter ends with Esther feeling more isolated than ever, surrounded by a world of possibilities that no longer excite her. The sense of impending doom that looms over her is palpable, and readers are left with the haunting feeling that Esther is heading toward a crisis. She doesn't know how to stop. Esther's disillusionment with the world around her continues to grow as her time in New York progresses. The glossy magazine world, the endless social events, and the parade of superficial conversations begin to suffocate her. The more she tries to immerse herself in this life of excitement and glamour, the more she feels like a stranger in her own skin. The beautiful women she works with, the ones who seem to glide effortlessly through life, only deepen her sense of inadequacy. They live in a world of privilege and apparent happiness, while Esther feels as if she's drowning in a sea of expectations that she cannot fulfill. Her sense of isolation intensifies as she continues to struggle with the question of who she is and who she is meant to be. She starts to wonder if she will ever find a way to fit into the life that seems so easily available to everyone else. The pressure to conform grows heavier, and every step she takes feels more like a failure. She can't seem to find a balance between her ambitions and the overwhelming desire to escape from the life others expect her to lead. The moments that should have been full of promise begin to feel hollow. One of the most jarring instances occurs when she is given the opportunity to attend a lavish luncheon with some of the most successful women in the city. At first, she is thrilled by the idea. The glamorous setting, the expensive food, and the polished women, everything is designed to be perfect. But once she arrives, she quickly realizes how alien she feels among them. The women discuss their vacations, their wardrobes, their husbands, and their latest beauty treatments, as if these are the only things that matter in life. The more they talk, the more Esther's discomfort grows. She wants to contribute, but she finds herself silent, unable to pretend that their conversation holds any real value for her. As the luncheon drags on, she begins to question her place in this world. How did she end up here? What is she really doing, sitting in this room full of women whose lives seem so far removed from hers? The conversation feels shallow, like a performance, and she begins to feel like an outsider. She realizes that this is what she's been striving for all along, a life of superficial success. But the more she reaches for it, the more she feels repelled by it. The world of wealth and privilege no longer seems glamorous or desirable. It feels like a hollow shell, empty and void of meaning. In an attempt to regain some sense of control, Esther tries to force herself to engage with the people around her. She smiles at the other women, listens to their stories, and pretends to be interested in their lives. But the more she tries to fit in, the more distant she feels from them. Their lives are constructed on an entirely different set of values, and no amount of pretending can bridge that gap. She is caught between her desire to belong and the nagging sense that she doesn't want to belong to this world at all. The luncheon ends, and she leaves, feeling more lost than ever. When she returns to the apartment where she is staying, the emptiness continues to linger. She goes through the motions of life, eating, sleeping, working, but everything feels increasingly meaningless. The world outside her window seems to continue on without her, as if she is simply a spectator in her own life. Each day blurs into the next, and the weight of the expectations placed on her becomes more and more unbearable. Esther's mental state begins to deteriorate. The sense of emptiness that has been growing inside her for months is now something that she can no longer ignore. She begins to question the very essence of her existence. What is the point of anything? Why does she continue to go through the motions of a life she doesn't want? It is at this point that she starts to have difficulty even getting out of bed in the mornings. The thought of facing another day feels like a monumental task. She no longer sees any purpose in pursuing a career, in meeting the expectations of those around her, or in playing the game of life that everyone else seems so eager to participate in. Every day is a struggle to maintain the facade of normalcy. To escape her thoughts, Esther begins to retreat inwardly. She isolates herself further, withdrawing from the people around her. She refuses to engage with the other women at the magazine, and her interactions with her coworkers become sparse. The city outside continues to pulse with energy, but Esther feels as though she's been cut off from it, trapped in her own spiraling thoughts. At this point, she begins to see the cracks in the facade of the perfect life that everyone else seems to be chasing. The women she works with, the ones who seem to have it all together, are no more content than she is. Some of them, she learns, have their own struggles and insecurities, masked behind their designer clothes and carefully constructed lives. This realization doesn't bring her comfort, but only deepens her despair. If the people who seem to have it all are just as lost as she is, what hope is there for someone like her? She feels as though there is no escape from the life she's been thrust into, and that every avenue she tries to explore only leads to more questions and more confusion. Her thoughts become more erratic, and she starts to question her ability to make any decisions at all. She cannot imagine a future for herself, a future in which she is happy and fulfilled. All the options before her, career, marriage, social success, seem equally unappealing. She is suffocating, unable to breathe freely in a world that doesn't make sense to her. The very things that should have been her aspirations now feel like chains, dragging her down deeper into her sense of despair. She recalls a conversation she had with Buddy Willard, the man she briefly dated before coming to New York. Buddy represents the kind of life Esther feels she should want: stable, traditional, secure. Yet, their relationship never quite fit. Even when they were together, she felt stifled, as though he was trying to fit her into a mold that didn't suit her. The conversation they had about marriage and the future now feels like a distant memory, one that is increasingly out of touch with her current reality. Buddy, like the women at the luncheon, represents a life she cannot accept, and the more she thinks about it, the more suffocating the prospect of that life becomes. As she sinks deeper into her own thoughts, the world around her continues to move forward, indifferent to her suffering. Esther is left to grapple with the overwhelming sense of disillusionment and despair that has taken over her mind. She is drowning in a sea of expectations, unsure of who she is or who she is meant to be. And the more she tries to break free, the more tangled she becomes in the web of societal pressure and personal confusion. As Esther's days blur together, the chasm between her and the world around her grows wider. The sense of alienation she feels in New York City becomes more pronounced, and she begins to retreat even further into herself. The buzzing energy of the city, once exciting, now feels suffocating. The streets that once seemed alive with promise now appear cold and indifferent, as if they too are filled with people lost in their own struggles, too preoccupied to notice her descent into despair. She finds herself increasingly unable to connect with anyone or anything, feeling as though she is walking through life as if in a fog. Esther's relationship with her mother, which had always been fraught with tension, becomes even more strained. Her mother's letters, which once carried a sense of care and concern, now feel like a reminder of the distance between them. Esther's mother wants her to succeed in the ways that society expects her to. She should be striving for a successful career, a marriage, and a place in the world of respectable women. But to Esther, these demands only deepen her sense of entrapment. She has come to realize that the life her mother envisions for her is one she cannot bear. The pressure to meet these expectations feels unbearable, and Esther cannot help but resent her mother for the role she plays in this. The correspondence between them is filled with well-meaning advice, but to Esther, it feels more like an imposition. Her mother tells her to be patient, to wait for the good things that will come with time. But patience has grown impossible for Esther. She is consumed by an overwhelming sense of dissatisfaction that has taken root deep within her, a dissatisfaction that no amount of waiting can alleviate. Her desire for fulfillment and meaning feels urgent, and yet every time she looks for a way forward, she only encounters walls. Her mother's words now seem hollow, as if they come from a different world, one in which Esther no longer has any place. Esther's interactions with men also become increasingly fraught. Her brief relationship with Buddy Willard, which had seemed promising at first, has come to an end. The romance had initially held a certain appeal for Esther, offering the possibility of a stable, traditional future. But as the relationship progressed, Esther realized that Buddy was not the answer to her confusion. He, too, had his own flaws, his own contradictions, and his own way of trying to impose his vision of a future on her. Buddy represents the kind of man Esther is supposed to desire, but the more she tries to align herself with him, the more alien he feels. His expectations for her, which initially seemed appealing, begin to feel like another form of constraint. Esther's realization that she cannot mold herself to fit into his world becomes a painful but necessary step in her journey toward understanding herself. Despite this, she continues to feel drawn to the idea of love and companionship, though not in the way society expects. She is increasingly repelled by the idea of a traditional, heterosexual marriage, which feels like a trap rather than a path to fulfillment. Yet, she cannot help but long for the deep connection that she has yet to find. She is searching for a love that is untraditional, one that allows her to be herself, free from the expectations of others. The lack of genuine connection she feels with men only highlights the void she feels inside. She longs for something real, but the relationships she encounters only deepen her sense of alienation. As the days pass, Esther's mental health continues to deteriorate. The symptoms of depression, which have been creeping up on her for some time, become impossible to ignore. She feels an increasing numbness, as though she is disconnected from her own emotions. Simple tasks, such as eating or getting out of bed, feel like insurmountable obstacles. The weight of her own thoughts is crushing, and she begins to feel as though she is disappearing into herself. It is as if the world around her is growing quieter and quieter, and she is losing her ability to participate in it. She spends more and more time in her room, isolating herself from the few people who still try to reach out to her. Esther has always felt like an outsider, but now, more than ever, she is convinced that she doesn't belong anywhere. She begins to question her own identity, wondering if she will ever be able to reconcile who she is with who she is expected to be. She wonders if there is any place for her in the world, and whether she will ever feel understood. The more she thinks about it, the more hopeless the future seems. Every option, every path, leads to more questions rather than answers. Her despair begins to manifest in physical ways. She experiences periods of intense exhaustion, where it feels as though she is carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her mind is constantly racing with thoughts of inadequacy, confusion, and self-doubt. She begins to lose interest in the things she once cared about. She is no longer motivated by the work she does at the magazine, and the relationships she maintains feel more like obligations than genuine connections. The world outside her window seems distant and unreachable, as though she is no longer a part of it. At the same time, Esther starts to entertain darker thoughts. She begins to contemplate the possibility of ending her life. The weight of her depression, combined with her feelings of hopelessness, creates a mental environment in which the idea of death seems like a possible escape. She doesn't see it as a solution to her problems, but rather as a way to silence the constant noise in her head, a way to put an end to the overwhelming feelings of confusion and alienation. The idea of death is no longer a distant thought, but a very real and frightening possibility. The more she thinks about it, the more it begins to feel like a legitimate option, one that would bring her the peace that she so desperately craves. Despite these thoughts, there is still a small part of Esther that wants to fight, to find a way out of the despair that has consumed her. But she feels trapped, as though she is sinking into quicksand, with no way to climb out. Every attempt to reach out, every effort to connect with someone, feels like it only drags her deeper into isolation. The world around her continues to spin, but Esther remains frozen, unable to move forward. In her darkest moments, she wonders if there is anyone out there who truly understands what she is going through. Someone who can see past the facade she has created and recognize the pain that lies beneath. But even as she searches for that connection, she remains convinced that no one could ever understand her fully. The isolation that she feels, both emotionally and mentally, seems impossible to overcome. The more she tries to fight it, the more it consumes her. In the depths of her struggle, Esther is confronted with a brutal truth. She feels like she is living in a world that doesn't have room for her. The world outside is moving forward, and everyone around her seems to have a place, a purpose. But for Esther, that place seems unreachable, and the future she once envisioned feels like a distant dream. Esther's decline continues, And with it, her relationship with herself becomes increasingly strained. Her daily routines become even more of a struggle. The simple act of getting out of bed in the morning has become an almost impossible task. The world outside her small, claustrophobic apartment in New York feels increasingly distant, and she finds herself withdrawing into herself more and more. Even the things that once provided some semblance of joy or distraction, her writing, the rare moments of social interaction, now feel empty. She tries to write, but her words feel hollow. The magazine work she once prided herself on has lost all meaning. The days blur together as she remains in a perpetual state of exhaustion, her mind clouded with confusion and despair. Her mental health continues to spiral, but instead of seeking help, Esther isolates herself further. She distances herself from the few remaining friends who reach out to her, and the relationships she does maintain feel increasingly superficial. One of the most poignant aspects of her struggle is the absence of genuine connection. She wants to reach out, to talk to someone who might understand her pain, but she cannot bring herself to do it. There's a belief buried deep inside her that no one could ever understand what she's going through. Not really. The people around her seem to go about their lives, and while they may offer sympathy, it always feels as though they are looking at her from the outside, unable to see the full depth of her suffering. She spends much of her time alone in her room, ruminating on her thoughts and feelings. The once lively city outside feels almost as though it is part of a different world, a world that has no place for her. It's in these quiet moments of reflection that the depths of her depression become most evident. The world seems increasingly out of her reach, and as the days go by, her sense of self-worth diminishes. She cannot see the point of continuing. The idea of death, which had hovered at the edges of her thoughts, becomes more appealing. She wonders if it would offer an escape from the crushing weight of her mind. Esther's depression becomes more difficult to ignore as her emotional and mental state deteriorates. Her mood swings are more frequent, and her feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness intensify. At times, she is overwhelmed by a sense of detachment from her own life. It feels as though she is no longer fully in control of her own existence. She watches her body go through the motions, eating, sleeping, getting dressed. But it all feels like an empty performance, a routine she can't escape. Even when she interacts with the world around her, she feels as though she is playing a part in a drama that has no meaning. There is no joy in these actions, only the knowledge that she is doing them because she must. One of the most telling aspects of Esther's state of mind is her increasing sense of alienation from those around her. She feels disconnected from her peers and the people in her life. It's as though she is watching the world go by from a distance, unable to fully participate. This sense of isolation is both physical and emotional. She cannot bring herself to reach out to others, and when she does engage, the conversations feel hollow. She is aware of her growing inability to connect with the people she once considered friends, and the realization that she has become a stranger to herself is heartbreaking. The friendships she once held dear feel distant and unimportant, and even the prospect of socializing becomes a chore. The more she retreats from others, the more she is convinced that they cannot possibly understand her. Amidst all this, Esther's perception of her own body begins to change. She becomes increasingly detached from it, almost as though it is a separate entity. something she no longer has control over. There are moments when she is acutely aware of how her body has begun to mirror her internal state. She experiences physical exhaustion, a deep fatigue that seems to permeate every part of her. Her reflection in the mirror feels like a stranger, and she no longer recognizes the girl staring back at her. It is as though her body, once a source of strength and vitality, has become just another part of the world she cannot control. The sense of alienation extends beyond her thoughts and feelings. It becomes a physical experience, as if her very body is betraying her. Even as her mental and physical state continues to deteriorate, Esther continues to grapple with her sense of self. She is torn between the world's expectations of her and her own desires for freedom and autonomy. She knows that her future should be bright, that she should be out in the world achieving something meaningful. But the pressure to conform to these expectations feels suffocating. She is caught in a cycle of trying to please others, but her own desires seem irrelevant. The idea of a future that involves marriage, career, and the life that society expects her to lead is nothing but a hollow promise. She cannot see herself fitting into this life, and the idea of fulfilling these roles feels like an overwhelming burden. One of the more telling aspects of Esther's struggle is her growing inability to reconcile the person she once was with the person she feels she is becoming. She no longer knows what it means to be herself. Who is she, really? Is she the person she once dreamed of becoming, the successful, independent woman with a bright future? Or is she this person she has become now, lost, detached, and disillusioned? This struggle to define herself is at the core of her mental anguish. She is searching for meaning in a world that seems devoid of it, and as she looks inward, she finds only emptiness. She begins to question everything: her relationships, her ambitions, her past choices, wondering if they led her down the wrong path. But the more she searches for answers, the more elusive they become. The confusion and pain she feels are compounded by a growing sense of helplessness. She no longer has the energy to fight against the forces that seem to be dragging her down. The depression she once thought she could overcome now feels like an immovable weight. She has tried to reach out for help, but each time she finds herself pushing others away. The thought of being understood by anyone seems impossible. She wonders if anyone else has ever felt this way, and yet, even as she questions this, she feels as though she is the only one in the world who is suffering like this. At the same time, Esther begins to see the possibility of escape in darker terms. She daydreams of finding a way out of the emotional turmoil she feels, but the escape she envisions is not one of hope. It is one of finality. The thought of ending it all becomes more prominent in her mind, and while she is not actively seeking death, she is drawn to the idea as a solution to her misery. There is a tragic sense of resignation in this. She no longer sees a way forward, only a way out. As the days drag on, Esther finds herself trapped in a cycle of despair and longing. She wants to escape from her pain, but she cannot see a way out. She is lost in a world that seems to have no place for her, and the longer she struggles to find herself, the more she feels like she is slipping further and further away from the person she once thought she could be. In her heart, she longs for peace, for a sense of self-acceptance, but it feels like a distant dream, one that she can never quite reach. Esther's sense of being trapped continues to grow, as she becomes further disconnected from both herself and the world around her. The suffocating pressure of her mental illness is now overwhelming her every waking moment. The outside world, once bustling and full of possibility, feels like a distant, alien landscape. Even the simplest daily tasks seem impossible, as if there is a thick fog preventing her from moving forward. Her interactions with others become strained, and she finds herself retreating further into isolation, where she feels both comforted and yet more detached than ever. The more she spirals into her depression, the more she is unable to differentiate between what is real and what is the product of her mind. The boundaries of her identity are dissolving. Who is Esther Greenwood? Is she the girl who once dreamed of greatness, the woman who could make a name for herself? Or is she simply someone who is broken, someone who has lost all sense of meaning? As she grapples with these questions, she feels that her life has become a blur of disconnected thoughts and fragmented moments. There is no coherence to her existence anymore. She is in a constant state of flux, never sure whether she is awake or lost in some kind of tortured dream. At the same time, the societal pressures that have always loomed over her become more pronounced. The expectations placed on women in the 1950s, especially those of a young woman like Esther, weigh heavily on her. The idea of marriage, of being a dutiful wife and mother, becomes both an unbearable prospect and a constant reminder of her failure to fit into the role prescribed to her. The more she tries to conform to these expectations, the more suffocating they feel. They are a constant reminder that she is not who she was supposed to be. Her inner rebellion against these norms grows stronger, but she is paralyzed by fear and confusion. She does not know how to escape the trap set by society's expectations, nor does she feel equipped to break free from them. In a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control, Esther tries to engage with the world around her. She makes half-hearted attempts to connect with the people who once held meaning in her life, her friends, her family. But these interactions feel increasingly hollow. Even with those closest to her, there is an unspoken distance. She cannot bring herself to be open, to let them see the depth of her pain. Instead, she keeps up the facade of normalcy, pretending to be the person she once was. But the pretense feels exhausting. Every time she forces herself to smile, to be pleasant, to appear fine, it only exacerbates her sense of alienation. The more she pretends, the more she feels that she is slipping away from her true self. Her relationship with her mother continues to deteriorate. Despite her mother's attempts to help, to fix her, Esther cannot find any comfort in her presence. The maternal love that should provide a sense of security instead becomes another source of tension. She feels trapped by her mother's constant, well-meaning interventions, which only make her feel more misunderstood. There is an emotional chasm between them that no amount of well-intentioned advice can bridge. Esther is no longer the girl her mother once knew, and in her mind, her mother will never truly understand her. This only deepens her sense of loneliness and alienation. Esther's attempt to reach out to her former self and the people around her seems increasingly futile. She is no longer able to articulate her thoughts or emotions in any meaningful way. Her attempts to explain herself, to make others understand her suffering, are always met with an emptiness, as though her words are lost in the air. She cannot communicate what is happening inside her, and even the people who want to help her seem incapable of truly grasping the magnitude of her pain. She is unable to articulate the feeling of being submerged in a world that feels like it is not her own. The idea of therapy begins to enter her mind, but Esther is deeply skeptical about the possibility of it providing relief. Her interactions with Dr. Nolan, the psychiatrist she sees intermittently, are complicated. On one hand, she is drawn to the idea of someone who might finally understand her, someone who might offer a path out of her pain. But on the other hand, the therapy sessions feel increasingly superficial. She is unable to open up fully, unable to trust Dr. Nolan completely. There is something about the experience that feels transactional, like she is being processed rather than truly understood. She feels that no amount of talking will ever truly fix what is broken inside her. Her sense of despair deepens with each session, and she begins to wonder if there is any real hope of finding a way out of the abyss. Despite all this, there are fleeting moments where Esther feels a glimmer of something resembling peace. Sometimes, when she is alone in her room, she experiences moments of clarity. These moments are rare, but they are significant. They are the moments when she is able to step outside of the overwhelming chaos in her mind and see things from a more objective perspective. It is during these moments that she allows herself to entertain the possibility that maybe, just maybe, things could improve. She wonders if there is a way to regain her sense of self, if there is a way to come back from this darkness. But these moments are fleeting, and they are soon overshadowed by the crushing weight of her depression. The light seems far away, unreachable, and she cannot help but feel that the darkness will swallow her whole. As the days pass, Esther's sense of hopelessness grows. She cannot find a reason to keep fighting. There is a profound disconnect between her thoughts and the actions she takes in the world. She goes through the motions of living, but it feels like a ghostly existence. Every step she takes feels empty, every conversation a hollow performance. It is as though she is both part of the world and separate from it, unable to reconcile the two. This duality, the person she used to be and the person she is becoming, is a constant source of torment. Yet, as the weight of her mental illness continues to drag her down, Esther begins to entertain the thought that her suffering might be endless. She starts to believe that there is no way out, no escape from the prison of her mind. The thought of death, once a distant and abstract idea, now seems like a real possibility. But even in these dark moments, there is a flicker of resistance, a part of her that refuses to give in. She does not know what that part is, but it exists, a faint voice that whispers in the background, urging her to fight just a little longer. Esther's sense of disillusionment deepens as she moves through the motions of her life, feeling increasingly detached from the world around her. The isolation she feels is no longer just emotional. It has become a physical sensation, a weight pressing on her chest that makes even the simplest interactions feel like monumental tasks. Her days are a blur of gray, each one indistinguishable from the next, and the world outside seems like an alien place, filled with people who continue to live their lives while she feels trapped in an ongoing nightmare. The ever-growing distance between herself and her environment makes Esther question the very nature of existence. Is she simply a passive observer of life, or is there something more for her? But as she contemplates this, she becomes more aware of how much she has lost touch with what she once cared about and the possibilities she once had for herself. As her depression continues to spiral, Esther's ability to trust herself diminishes. She begins to feel like a stranger in her own body, a spectator to the life she should be living. The disconnect is palpable, and she has trouble discerning whether the things she feels and experiences are real or just figments of her mind. Her emotions swing between numbness and despair, and she becomes increasingly indifferent to the people around her, as if they are part of an entirely different reality. Even her own reflection in the mirror seems foreign to her now. The girl she once knew ambitious, full of life, eager to explore the world, seems like a distant memory, a version of herself that has slipped beyond her grasp. Her time at the mental institution is marked by moments of fleeting clarity, but these moments are few and far between. In the midst of her emotional turmoil, Esther is offered the chance to undergo shock therapy, a treatment that promises to reset her mind and relieve her of the depression that has consumed her for so long. The thought of shock therapy fills her with dread, but she also feels a strange, almost desperate desire to try anything that might offer relief. The idea of erasing the black hole inside her, even temporarily, seems like a lifeline. However, despite this desire, she cannot escape the feeling that nothing will ever truly help her. She wonders if she will ever escape the grip of her illness, or if it will continue to define her life forever. In the mental institution, Esther meets a variety of patients, each with their own struggles, and yet she feels no connection to them. The patients around her are all afflicted with their own unique forms of distress, but she finds it hard to relate to them. Their stories seem distant, as though they belong to a different world, one that is too far removed from her own pain. The isolation within the institution is not physical, it is emotional. There is no camaraderie, no shared experience that brings them together. Each person is locked inside their own struggle, unable to reach out and connect with anyone else. Esther feels like an outsider, trapped in a sea of people who are as alien to her as the rest of the world feels. The institution itself, meant to provide healing, seems to offer little more than a sterile, indifferent environment. It is not a place of refuge, but a cold, impersonal setting where Esther feels like a specimen, a subject to be studied rather than a human being with her own desires, fears, and experiences. The clinical nature of the institution only deepens her sense of disconnection. She is not a person here, she is a diagnosis, a case to be treated. In many ways, this treatment feels like just another form of imprisonment, one that strips her of her agency and leaves her even more adrift than before. As Esther moves through her days in the institution, she tries to find meaning in the small moments that still hold a semblance of normalcy. She finds comfort in the presence of Dr. Nolan, the psychiatrist who has a genuine interest in her recovery. Unlike the other doctors she has seen, Dr. Nolan seems to see Esther as a person rather than a problem. There is a kindness in her approach that Esther finds both surprising and comforting. Dr. Nolan's willingness to listen, her openness, allows Esther to begin the process of opening up about her struggles in a way she has not been able to do before. It is not easy. Esther is still hesitant to trust anyone completely. But there is a flicker of hope in the way Dr. Nolan speaks to her. For the first time in a long while, Esther feels like she might not be completely alone in her battle. Despite this connection, Esther's mental state remains fragile. Every moment feels like a battle against herself. She feels torn between a desire to escape the institution and the growing understanding that she needs help, that she cannot continue to live in this way. Her relationship with herself is fractured, and the path to healing is unclear. She wonders if anyone can truly understand the depths of her despair, or if she is beyond saving. Her self-worth is at an all-time low, and she continues to feel as if her life is slipping away from her, one agonizing moment at a time. It is as though she is stuck in a cycle, unable to break free from the chains of her own mind. The more she thinks about her future, the more distant it seems. The life that once seemed full of possibility and promise now feels like a cruel joke. Every aspiration she once had now seems absurd, an illusion she can no longer grasp. The desire to return to a life she thought she would have, a career, a family, a sense of purpose, has faded into something unrecognizable. The world outside seems irretrievably out of reach, a place she cannot imagine returning to. Her illness, in a way, has consumed not just her present, but also her future, leaving her in a limbo that feels both endless and inescapable. Yet, even in the darkest corners of her mind, Esther occasionally allows herself to entertain the idea that there could be a way out of her suffering. There are moments when she dares to hope, to wonder if the world she once knew could be reclaimed. These moments are fragile, and they quickly slip away, replaced by overwhelming doubt and despair. Still, they persist, like small lights in the darkness, offering a brief flicker of possibility. But whether or not she can hold on to them, or whether they are enough to pull her out of the depths of her depression, remains to be seen. Esther's time in the mental institution stretches on, each day blending into the next in an endless haze of dull routines and stifling silence. Despite the small moments of respite and care she receives from Dr. Nolan, the weight of her depression continues to crush her, a constant reminder of the distance between herself and the world she once inhabited. As she becomes more accustomed to the rhythms of the institution, the sense of alienation deepens. While some of the other patients attempt to connect, sharing their stories and experiences, Esther remains isolated, unwilling to fully engage with them. She feels as if she has drifted so far from herself that any connection with others would be futile. In her mind, she is a stranger, not just to the people around her, but to the person she used to be, the person she hoped she would become. The institution, with its cold walls and sterile environment, seems more like a trap than a place of healing. The treatments, shock therapy, medications, have done little to improve her state of mind. In fact, they seem to have only heightened her sense of disconnection. The shock therapy, which she had once hoped might offer a temporary escape from the grip of her depression, has only left her feeling more fragmented. The shock of each treatment is disorienting, leaving her with a sense of emptiness that lingers long after the procedure is over. There is no relief, no release from the thoughts and feelings that continue to haunt her. If anything, the treatments have made her more aware of the chasm between herself and the life she once envisioned. It's during one of these low points that Esther begins to reflect more deeply on her life before the depression took hold. She thinks about the person she used to be, ambitious, curious, filled with the promise of a bright future. She remembers the excitement of being young, of having a world of possibilities ahead of her. There were dreams, plans, and aspirations she held on to. But now, all of that seems distant and unreachable. The Esther she once knew feels like a different person, someone she cannot relate to. The future she had once imagined for herself has slipped away, replaced by a sense of dread and helplessness. Even the thought of returning to the life she had before feels foreign to her. How could she possibly return to that world when she has become so fundamentally altered by her illness? Esther's relationship with her family continues to be strained. Her mother, well-meaning but distant, does not seem to understand the depths of her pain. Her visits are infrequent, and each time she leaves, Esther is left feeling more alone, more disconnected from the world. She is grateful for her mother's concern, but it only serves to highlight the chasm between them. There is no true connection, no sense of shared understanding. Esther cannot even explain the depths of her suffering to her. The words elude her, and even if she could find them, she fears that her mother would not be able to comprehend what she is going through. Her family's love, while genuine, feels insufficient in the face of the darkness inside her. Even the people she meets within the institution, people who are similarly struggling with their own mental health battles, seem like distant figures. She tries to reach out at times, to engage in conversations or small moments of connection. But these efforts always fall short. She remains unable to truly share herself with others, unable to let anyone in. It's as if there is an invisible barrier between herself and the rest of humanity, a wall she cannot break through. Her sense of isolation is palpable, and it only grows stronger with each passing day. The more she tries to engage with the world, the more she feels alienated from it. It's as if she is no longer a part of the world, but rather a mere observer, watching from the sidelines as others go on with their lives. Despite the overwhelming sense of disconnection, there are moments when Esther experiences brief flashes of clarity. These moments are fleeting, but powerful, glimpses of a life that could be, a life that she might still have the chance to reclaim. She sees herself in the mirror sometimes, not as the fragile, broken person she feels like, but as the girl she once was, full of potential and vitality. These glimpses are rare, and they do not last long, but they give her a taste of what life could be if she could only find a way out of her despair. However, these moments are often overshadowed by the persistent fog of depression that continues to cloud her thoughts and emotions. Dr. Nolan's support remains a steady source of solace, while Esther remains largely skeptical of her ability to heal. She can't deny the warmth and care Dr. Nolan shows her. In contrast to the cold, impersonal atmosphere of the institution, Dr. Nolan offers a genuine connection, one that allows Esther to begin opening up about her fears and struggles in a way she has never been able to do before. She listens, and though Esther cannot yet fully trust her, there is a part of her that wants to believe in the possibility of recovery, in the possibility of reconnecting with herself. Dr. Nolan is not a cure, but she is a lifeline, a reminder that not all is lost. Yet, even with Dr. Nolan's help, Esther cannot shake the overwhelming sense that she is losing herself. The more she tries to understand what is happening to her, the more elusive the answers become. She feels as though she is caught in a never-ending cycle of pain and confusion, unable to break free. The thought of returning to her life before, of attempting to rebuild everything that has been shattered, feels like an insurmountable challenge. But at the same time, there is a part of her that still clings to the hope that recovery is possible. It's a fragile hope, but it's enough to keep her from giving up entirely. The struggle is exhausting, but there is a faint spark inside her that refuses to be extinguished. As she contemplates the future, Esther is torn between the desire to escape and the knowledge that she needs help. She longs to leave the institution, to be free from the treatments, the routines, and the overwhelming sense of confinement. But at the same time, she recognizes that she cannot do this on her own. She is not strong enough to face her demons by herself. The battle is too great, and the stakes are too high. Her illness has taken too much from her, and she knows that in order to survive, she must continue to seek the help she needs. But even as she seeks help, she feels herself slipping further away from the world she once knew, further away from the person she used to be. Esther's time in the institution drags on, each day passing in a blur of indistinct events. The world outside seems more and more like a distant memory, and she finds herself losing track of time and place. Her sense of reality grows increasingly fragmented as she drifts between moments of clarity and deep despair. Although Dr. Nolan continues to support her with patience and empathy, Esther struggles to trust that any lasting change will come. Every conversation with her feels like a brief reprieve from the relentless inner turmoil. Yet the weight of Esther's isolation never truly lifts. She remains entangled in her own thoughts, unable to connect with the people around her or even her own feelings. In the midst of this, Esther continues to have moments of intense self-doubt, questioning whether she will ever escape the prison of her mind. The sense of inadequacy that she has carried with her for years seems to grow stronger in the sterile walls of the institution. She is confronted daily with the reality of her illness, and each passing day seems like a reminder of how much further she has fallen from the aspirations and dreams she once held. She reflects on the girl she used to be, someone who was curious and passionate about life, filled with the promise of a future she was eager to claim. Now, that girl seems like a stranger to her, someone locked away in a past that is quickly slipping into oblivion. The idea of returning to that life, of finding a way back to who she was, feels more and more impossible. Even in the face of this overwhelming despair, there are moments when Esther recognizes a flicker of something in herself. A brief sense of hope rises within her, almost imperceptible, like a spark that could ignite a flame if given the chance. It is fragile and fleeting, but in these rare moments, she remembers that she is not just a victim of her illness. She is still Esther Greenwood, someone with the capacity for change, someone who has the ability to reclaim her own life. But these moments are quickly smothered by the weight of her depression, the walls closing in around her once again. The feeling of hopelessness is a constant companion, and it is difficult to see beyond the darkness that engulfs her. Esther's interactions with the other patients in the institution remain limited, though she occasionally finds herself observing them with a sense of detached curiosity. She watches as they navigate their own struggles, each person trapped in their own mental and emotional prison. Some of them have seemingly accepted their fate, going through the motions of daily life with an air of resignation. Others are more agitated, their distress visible in their every gesture. Esther finds it hard to relate to any of them. While she recognizes that they too are suffering, she feels utterly disconnected from their pain. She is trapped within her own experience, unable to see beyond her personal agony. The idea of reaching out to them, of forging connections, seems as distant as the life she once knew. At times, she is forced to confront the fact that the future is slipping further and further from her grasp. She is unable to imagine what her life could look like beyond the institution. The possibility of recovery feels remote, and the thought of reintegrating into society feels alien. Her life seems to have been frozen in time, each day a repetition of the one before, each moment a step further away from the future she had once envisioned. She wonders if she will ever be able to reclaim any part of that future. Will she ever be able to experience the joy and fulfillment she once dreamed of? Will she ever be able to feel whole again? These questions swirl in her mind, unanswered and unanswerable, leaving her feeling more adrift than ever. Yet even in the midst of her despair, Esther begins to recognize the small, incremental changes that have been taking place within her. It is not an immediate transformation, but a gradual softening of the walls she has built around herself. Dr. Nolan's persistent care, while not a cure, provides a small sliver of comfort that has slowly begun to make a difference. Esther is able to open up, just a little, about her darkest thoughts, her most secret fears. It is a terrifying process, for she has spent so much time hiding her true self, even from herself. But in her vulnerability, there is the slightest possibility of healing. Each step she takes feels uncertain, but it is still a step forward. In her quiet moments, Esther reflects on her past and wonders if she could ever find a way to reclaim her life. She remembers the woman she was before the depression took hold of her, before the dark cloud of despair descended, cutting her off from the world she once knew. The life she had dreamed of now feels unreachable, but Esther wonders if it might still be possible to find a way back to herself. The idea of moving beyond the institution, beyond the rigid structure of treatments and routines, is a daunting one. Yet it is also the only way forward. She cannot stay in this place forever. Eventually, she will have to face the world again, no matter how intimidating that prospect might be. Despite the overwhelming sense of fear and uncertainty, Esther realizes that she cannot continue to exist in a state of stasis. She must take risks, no matter how small they may seem. In some ways, even staying in the institution feels like an escape, a way to avoid facing the enormity of the challenges that lie ahead. But she cannot stay hidden forever. She knows, deep down, that she must begin to rebuild her life, to confront her illness head-on and embrace the possibility of recovery, no matter how daunting that journey may seem. There are still so many unknowns, so many fears to face, but Esther feels the stirrings of something within her, a glimmer of determination that she has not felt in a long time. Perhaps, just perhaps, there is a way out of the darkness. It will not be easy, and it will not happen overnight, but the possibility of healing, of recovery, is enough to keep her going. With each day that passes, Esther edges closer to the realization that she is not beyond redemption. The path ahead may be long and uncertain, but it is a path worth taking. Esther's time in the hospital slowly nears its end, though she is far from ready to leave. The walls of the institution that once felt so confining have become familiar, even comforting in their own way. There is a strange sense of safety in the regimented nature of her days, where every moment is accounted for, and the unpredictable chaos of the outside world seems distant and unreal. The idea of returning to the world, with all its demands and expectations, now feels like an insurmountable challenge. She has spent so long in this protective cocoon that the thought of stepping out into the unknown is both terrifying and overwhelming. The world she once knew feels as though it has drifted farther and farther away from her, leaving her unsure of where she belongs or what her place in it could be. In the hospital, Esther begins to feel a sense of detachment from her past life. The girl she once was, the one filled with ambition and dreams of a future, now seems like a figure from a distant story, someone she can barely recognize. Her depression has reshaped her, erasing her sense of self and leaving behind a hollow version of the person she once was. Yet, there are moments when the fog lifts, however briefly, and she catches glimpses of the person she was before the illness took hold of her and dragged her into its dark, suffocating grip. These fleeting moments bring with them a sense of hope, but they are quickly overshadowed by the ever-present cloud of doubt and uncertainty. It is as if Esther is constantly at war with herself, struggling to reconcile the woman she used to be with the person she has become. Dr. Nolan, who has been a constant source of support, tries to reassure Esther, gently guiding her through the process of her recovery. She encourages Esther to confront her fears, to face the realities of her illness and her place in the world. But Esther remains hesitant, unwilling to believe that she can truly leave the confines of the hospital behind and re-enter society as a whole, functional person. Each time she takes a small step forward, she is plagued by the nagging fear that the world will never accept her, that her scars, both physical and emotional, will mark her as different, as broken. She is terrified of the judgment she might face, of the looks and whispers from others who will never understand the depth of her pain. These fears continue to haunt her, keeping her trapped in the hospital, even as she inches closer to the possibility of release. Though Esther still struggles with profound feelings of isolation, she finds herself growing more open to the idea of connection. In her interactions with Dr. Nolan and the other patients, she begins to recognize that she is not alone in her suffering. There are others who, in their own ways, are facing similar battles, and this realization brings with it a strange comfort. For the first time in a long while, Esther begins to believe that there may be a place for her in the world after all. She is not the only one who has been touched by tragedy, who has faced insurmountable odds. The other patients in the institution, with their own stories of hardship and pain, help to remind her that recovery is not an individual pursuit, but a shared journey. Each person in the hospital, no matter their struggles, is striving to find their way back to themselves. And in this shared experience, Esther finds a glimmer of hope. There are days when Esther feels as though she is on the verge of breakthrough, when the weight of her depression lifts, if only for a moment. During these times, she allows herself to dream of a future, to imagine what life might look like outside the hospital walls. These dreams are not as vivid or as passionate as the ones she once had, but they are a start. They are enough to keep her going, to remind her that there is still a possibility for something more. She begins to think about what she might do once she is released, how she might rebuild her life from the ground up. But even as she envisions this future, she cannot shake the fear that it is a fantasy, an unattainable dream that she will never be able to make a reality. Esther's sense of uncertainty deepens as her discharge from the hospital draws closer. What will life look like when she steps out into the world again? Will she be able to survive outside the bubble of therapy and care? Can she ever truly heal from the scars of her illness, or will she always be defined by the darkness she has endured? These questions swirl in her mind, unanswered and unresolved. And yet, despite the overwhelming sense of fear and uncertainty, there is a part of Esther that believes in the possibility of healing. It is a small belief, buried beneath layers of doubt and despair, but it is there, quietly refusing to die. For the first time in a long while, Esther begins to think that maybe, just maybe, she will be able to navigate the world outside of the institution and reclaim a sense of purpose and belonging. But this belief is fragile, and Esther knows that her journey is far from over. The path ahead is still clouded with doubt, and she cannot imagine what it will take to heal fully. The outside world holds so many unknowns, and the thought of stepping into it is both exhilarating and terrifying. Yet, as she prepares for her eventual release, she realizes that she has no choice but to take that step. She cannot stay in the hospital forever, no matter how safe it may feel. At some point, she will have to face the world again, to confront the reality of her illness and the long road to recovery that still lies ahead. She has come so far, and though she has much further to go, she is beginning to believe that the future is not as impossible as it once seemed. In the final days before her release, Esther begins to prepare herself for the next chapter of her life. It is not a smooth transition, and there are still moments when she feels overwhelmed by the uncertainty of it all. But the fact that she is even considering the possibility of life outside the institution is a small victory in itself. The woman she was before her breakdown may still seem like a distant memory, but Esther begins to realize that she has the power to shape her own future, to rebuild herself piece by piece. It will not be easy, and it will not happen overnight, but she knows that the path to healing begins with the first step, however uncertain and terrifying that step may be. As Esther prepares to leave the hospital, a wave of conflicting emotions washes over her. There is a strange sense of ambivalence, an uncertainty that lingers in her chest, making it hard to distinguish what she truly feels. She is not exactly happy to leave. The institution, despite its limitations and the painful memories it holds, has offered her some form of sanctuary. The boundaries of the hospital, its strict schedule, its routines, the steady presence of her doctors and fellow patients have given her a sense of control, or at least a semblance of structure in the chaos that often overwhelmed her outside those walls. There, her world had been small, confined, but manageable. The world outside, on the other hand, feels immense and unpredictable, full of endless possibilities that carry their own weight of fear and doubt. Esther struggles to imagine how she will re-enter a world that has felt foreign to her for so long. Dr. Nolan continues to be a supportive presence, encouraging Esther to see this moment as a new beginning, a step toward reclaiming her life. Yet, Esther cannot escape the nagging thought that she is being pushed out of a place that, for all its imperfections, had become a temporary refuge from the storm inside her mind. It is almost as if she is being abandoned by the very people who helped her begin to heal. The comfort of the institution, its predictability, its promise of safety, feels irreplaceable. How can she return to the uncertainty of the outside world after everything that has happened? Despite the mixed feelings, Esther knows that staying in the hospital indefinitely is not an option. Her release signifies progress, no matter how uncertain and daunting it seems. She is not fully healed, she acknowledges, but the decision to leave signifies that she has the potential to heal, that there is still room for growth. There is an understanding, however, that recovery will not be linear. There will be days, perhaps months, when Esther will face setbacks, doubts, and overwhelming despair. She understands this now. She has learned that healing is not about achieving perfection, but about continuing, one step at a time, even in the midst of struggle. On the day of her release, as Esther packs her belongings, there is a strange weight to the air, as though she is leaving something important behind. The rooms, the familiar faces of the staff and patients, the sterile white walls, all of it is about to become part of her past. Yet, there is also the promise of something new, something that exists beyond the hospital's walls. She wonders if she is ready for the challenges that await her, but deep down, she knows that she has no choice but to try. As she steps out of the institution's doors, she is struck by how vast and open the world feels. The sky seems brighter, the sounds of the street sharper, but they all feel distant, almost dreamlike. The world outside is no longer just a place she was hiding from. It is now something she must face, one uncertain moment at a time. When Esther finally returns home, she is met with a mixture of expectations from her family. Her mother seems hopeful, yet she doesn't fully understand what Esther has gone through, what she continues to battle within herself. The people around her are eager to see her better, to believe that she has been cured. But Esther knows that recovery is a far more complex and ongoing process than anyone realizes. She is expected to slip seamlessly back into the role she had once played in the world, as though her illness had been a temporary distraction. But for Esther, that world no longer feels like a place where she belongs. The things she once cared about, the trivialities of social life, the pressures of success and ambition, now seem hollow and meaningless. She finds herself looking at her old life with a sense of alienation, like she is no longer part of it. Despite the pressure to conform, to return to her former self, Esther begins to realize that this new phase of her life, one that is still uncertain and fragile, requires a redefinition of who she is. The woman who entered the hospital was a different person than the one who is leaving it, and she must come to terms with that transformation. She will never return to the person she once was, nor should she. The world has changed, and so has she. This awareness does not come as a sense of relief, but more as a quiet acceptance. The Esther who once dreamed of a future filled with achievement and recognition has faded away, replaced by a woman who is learning to live with her flaws, her fears, and her uncertainties. This woman is not perfect, nor does she seek to be, but she is learning to embrace what remains of herself. There are moments when Esther feels that she is standing on the edge, looking down into an abyss of uncertainty, unsure whether she will ever be able to climb out. But even in those moments of despair, she has begun to understand that healing is not about avoiding the abyss, but about learning to navigate it, step by step. There will be days when the world will feel unbearable, when the weight of depression will threaten to pull her back under. But she also knows now that she is not without resources. The therapy, the support, the courage she has found within herself, these are tools she can carry with her as she moves forward. At the end of the day, Esther is left with the quiet realization that recovery is not a destination, but an ongoing process. She may never be completely free of the shadows that have followed her, but she can learn to live alongside them, to make room for them in her life without allowing them to define her. The story of her illness, her breakdown, and her time in the hospital is far from over. It is simply evolving into something else, a quieter, more subtle part of her life that will continue to shape her, but not control her. As As she stands at the threshold of a new chapter, the future remains uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Esther allows herself to believe that it might be worth stepping into. She is learning to find her way through the darkness, even when the light feels distant. And though the road ahead will undoubtedly be difficult, she has taken the first step toward reclaiming her life, and that, for now, is enough. The Bell Jar is a novel that does more than just recount the painful journey of a young woman grappling with mental illness. It serves as a poignant exploration of identity, societal expectations, and the overwhelming isolation that can come with both. Through Esther Greenwood's narrative, Sylvia Plath immerses readers in a world of confusion, despair, and at times, fragile hope, offering a lens into the psychological toll that mental illness takes on an individual. Plath's brilliance lies in her ability to capture the complexity of Esther's internal battle, conveying not just the symptoms of her depression, but the depth of her existential questioning. Esther's journey, from the exhilarating highs of ambition to the crushing lows of suicidal despair, is a reflection of the human condition, particularly in a society that demands conformity and success. The metaphor of the bell jar, trapping Esther in a vacuum of self-doubt, is one that resonates beyond her personal experiences, echoing the pressure that many face to fit into predefined roles. The struggle between individuality and societal expectations is a theme that runs through the novel, making it a timeless reflection on the challenges that accompany the search for identity, purpose, and belonging. One of the most compelling aspects of the novel is its treatment of mental illness. Plath doesn't shy away from presenting the rawness of Esther's condition, making it clear that recovery is not a linear path, nor is it always a path that leads to resolution or understanding. By the end of the novel, there is no clean, triumphant recovery. Instead, we see a woman who has learned to live with her struggles, who understands that healing isn't about achieving perfection, but about continuing to move forward, even in the face of uncertainty. Plath's portrayal of Esther's mental illness, its complexities, its cycles, and its aftermath, is a powerful reminder of the importance of compassion and understanding for those suffering in silence. At its core, The Bell Jar is a story about survival. Despite the depth of her despair, Esther does not simply fade into nothingness. She faces her demons, makes painful decisions, and finds the strength to face a future, uncertain though it may be. The novel does not offer easy answers, but it encourages readers to reflect on their own lives and on the lives of those who may be struggling around them. Plath's depiction of mental illness is both a call to attention and a challenge to break the silence surrounding such experiences. The book also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of glossing over mental health issues and the unrealistic expectations placed upon individuals, particularly women, in society. Esther's breakdown is not simply a personal failure, but a reflection of the pressures to conform to societal ideals. It challenges the assumption that success and perfection can solve everything, pushing us to reconsider what it means to live a fulfilling life in a world that often demands too much. In conclusion, The Bell Jar remains a timeless, essential work of literature that continues to resonate with readers across generations. Its exploration of mental illness, identity, and the societal pressures that shape our lives remains as relevant today as when it was first published. Sylvia Plath's haunting, lyrical prose and her ability to navigate the darkest corners of the human experience make this novel a powerful, unforgettable read. Esther's journey may be one of struggle, but it is also one of resilience. And it is this resilience that offers a glimmer of hope amidst the overwhelming despair. Plath's novel reminds us that, even in the darkest moments, there is a possibility for growth, for change, and for the reclaiming of one's sense of self.